Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading White Women Get Ready, How Healing Post-Traumatic Mistress Syndrome Leads to Anti-Racist Change by Amanda K. Gross. I'm working through this book for my own deconstruction of the myth of white supremacy, and if you would like to read along with me, you can get copies attached here. This section is called Revealing My Inner Scarlet, and she has just taken a black friend home with her to visit her white family in Atlanta. And then she received an email from the friend being told, after she thought the trip went very well, then she received an email from the black friend telling her that she felt very tokenized as the black friend and hurt by the whole interaction. So now the author is unpacking that. Okay, that's the context. My purpose in telling this story is to emphasize how complex and messy unpacking these dynamics is. These relationships don't only exist within the context of race. Clearly, we are all imperfect humans navigating our triggers and traumas and mental health and unhealed family stuff. And we are doing this as we bump up against each other. And also, as someone who's been racialized as white, there is racialized harm I will never experience or know. There are dimensions of racialized harm I will continue to have to learn to even perceive. As I am specifically unpacking in this book, the way I navigate these lessons and relationships, or choose not to, has very much been shaped by my inheritance into Mistress syndrome. And on a comment yesterday, I think on the reading that I did yesterday, a black woman commented, like, this is so good because white women need to realize that there's no point at which you have achieved, like, being woke enough, right? There's no point that you just have done enough of the work. And I said that comment, and I said the same thing to my male spouse, right? There's no point at which you've deconstructed masculinity and patriarchy enough. It is just going to be our life's work. It got to the point when I would see I had a text from Felicia or Kayla, this woman and her mother, and my hands would shake and my heart rate would spike. Even though mostly they were positive or neutral, any text or email from these women who were becoming chosen family, whom I so deeply loved, admired, and respected, and whom I knew cared for me, would incite panic. It took me 5 years to be able to work up the courage to name to Felicia that receiving those texts induced panic in me. But back to the Atlanta Thanksgiving disaster file. Receiving Kayla's email felt devastating, which is not to discount or minimize her experiences or truths. She was clearly triggered by aspects of our trip and our relationship dynamics. In my calmer moments, knowing what I do know about historical trauma, I can imagine why she didn't tell me in the moment. I can see how the approach might be connected to a historical survival strategy of her own. That in the mistress's house with her family and dependent, or at least perceived dependency, on her hospitality, it would not have been safe to speak her full truth. Intellectually, historically, and analytically, I know that written communication allows the safety of distance, the agency to frame one's own truth. I know cognitively that I have the racial advantage and that that is not an abstraction. In both the visit to Atlanta and having her and her mother live in my home, I had the material access to real lived security. That power dynamic was not hypothetical at the end of the day. My name was on the mortgage. But, and also, those moments were incredibly intense for me as well. I cautiously pull out the file, Atlanta Thanksgiving Disaster, Part 1. She sent me that email. Feelings in the file: confusion, fear, anger, hurt, more confusion. Fear that I did something to jeopardize the relationship. Confusion that I really didn't understand what she was naming. Frustration that I disagreed with how she perceived and interpreted what happened. Anger that she preempted dialogue. Frustration that there was no opportunity to ask follow-up questions, clarify, or come to a mutual understanding. Hurt that she would make an accusation that I was using her or misrepresenting myself. Activated that she claimed a single, definite, permanent narrative. Rage at feeling silenced. Perhaps my biggest trigger of all. The pain of the file had made it look succinct, but then I realized there is in fact a lot more information here. Along with her email, the folder also contains my response. In reading her email, I relived my pain, hurt, fear, and anger. But in rereading my response, I feel a wave of shame. I feel queasy. My email lands in my stomach, swirling around unevenly, unsettled. My body refuses its digestion. I'm disgusted at myself. The folder has a second tab. Part 2, my panicked response. My panic is dripping all over my email. Oh, I think, this is what's causing the blue dye to run. Like a puppy rolling over to submit, I apologize in each paragraph. I fully agree with her evaluation of me and am careful to be honest in my appeasement. I say I was raised to emit a homely persona, which is true. I say that I feel sick to my stomach that she felt used, also true. And that I genuinely wanted her to come to Atlanta because I thought she would enjoy it, and I wanted her in my life in that way, true again. I tell her she was absolutely right that I have a lot of work to do when it comes to being in healthy relationships with Black folks, lifelong work for any white person. I write how I hate that either her or her mother would not feel like they could stay in my home, also true. I go on and on about how grateful I am for her and her mother and how much I've been learning, which again is and was true, followed by this self-depreciating ending. I am upset at myself for the role I played in you both feeling these crappy ways, and for the ways I have impacted you and made you feel terrible and have frustrated and disappointed you. This one is only a partial truth. And then, in a grand finale of dramatic appeasement, I throw myself at her feet, even offering to stay somewhere else while she visits to talk about splitting homeownership, ending with, I also recognize that material things matter, but are no substitute for trust and honesty and respect, and the immaterial things I'm responsible for in relationships. This last line especially feels hypocritical. I've said before that mistress syndrome is about the inheritance of lies and self-lies, which is true in all cults. What I've learned from being a white woman is to appease the person in power. Sure, the roots of deference come from the legacy of survival in close proximity with white men, but when directly transferred onto other relational dynamics, it shows up in other ways. In the world of anti-racist organizing, in which white folks are instructed to follow the leadership of people of color, I have taken it upon myself to re-indoctrinate my mind to positively bias the experiences, wisdom, and leadership of Black women. Yet I'm beginning to understand how I have interpreted the directive of following Black leadership as an all or nothing. I have replaced the actors, but kept the white patriarchal idea of hierarchy intact. When in conflict with Black women, it has been easier for me to defer without question than to engage my agency. It has also felt familiar to do this. It draws upon my internalized self-depreciation, martyrdom, and self-doubt. In looking back at these emails many years later, I can see more clearly what was probably her stuff and what was mine, when at the time it was so confusing. I can see too how the filing cabinet strategy prevented me from being fully honest and authentic with her in the moment. I see how holding on to my emotional filing cabinet system, as opposed to more fully showing up in the actual moment, has been facilitated by my access to white womanhood. I see how it has allowed me to divide and hide, keeping what I truly thought and felt withheld, privately compartmentalized from that of my public persona. Just like my public-facing persona, the niceness of the plantation mistress was always a falsehood. Falsehoods, even when they're dressed up in lace, impair the building of trust. And trust is the cornerstone of any authentic relationship, especially one that attempts to untie hundreds of years of history. I see how this form of protective dishonesty has caused distrust in my relationships, especially with Black women. This self-deception has been part of what propelled me toward the writing of this book. Now that I'm practicing more authenticity, there are so many files to sort through and much to unlearn.